What was your favorite part of the Trey White era? 4 different fan bases will be able to say that once his college career is finished. Trey White entered the transfer portal right after Morez Johnson, I believe Saturday. So we're a couple of days removed, had some time to process. I was very busy Saturday, so I didn't get to really put a ton out there. But I have a lot more thoughts about the Morez Johnson stuff than I do the Trey White stuff, but I do have a separate video up on the YouTube channel about Morez Johnson if you want to go check that out. But this Trey White thing, I said in the Morez Johnson video that it's Adam Miller vibes. The Trey White thing is Sky Clark vibes all over again. I mean, he started at USC, transfers to Louisville, transfers to Illinois, and despite the fact that he started nearly every game this season, averaged 10.5 points per game, and, played a pretty big role and was a big part of Illinois kind of turning around the season after the Duke loss this year, played a lot of minutes. I don't know what this guy would have wanted personally. And unless he wanted a bigger role, unless he wanted to be more part of the offense, because he's kind of like I felt like they never ran anything for him. It's kind of like Terrence Shannon Jr., except obviously not nearly as good and talented as Terrence Shannon Jr., but you'd see him do more. You'd see him do some ISO stuff. You'd see him get out in transition and show off his athleticism for Illinois this year. But it's not like they were running sets for him. And so he was one of those guys that if they got a defensive stop and they get out in transition, he gets the ball coming down and he gets going downhill. He's a threat. So perhaps he wants a larger role next year. And maybe Illinois doesn't want to give him that. And I can't necessarily blame them for that, if that is the case. But I'm just I go back and forth with this one. I'm not necessarily super upset about it. The only thing that I'm truly upset about is that you're now having to replace another guy, right? 10.5 points and 5.5 rebounds per game last year. You got to replace that now. And after losing to Kentucky, I was hopeful that you'd be able to return Tre White, Morez Johnson, Kylan Boswell, Tomislav Ivicic. We know Tommy is going to go test the NBA draft waters, most likely coming back. Kylan's the only one that I'm for sure going to be here. He's the only one that I'm like, at this point, I'm like, yeah, I feel like Tommy's going to be here too. And as of this recording, his brother entered the transfer portal today. So perhaps, maybe, Illinois is going to be calling him, right? But Trey White is going to play for a 4th team in college hoops. This era of college basketball, man, it really is the wild, wild west, as a lot of people say. I've heard that from a lot of people with this transfer portal and NIL. So I would say he either wanted a bigger bag, he wanted a larger role, and Illinois wasn't willing to do that. And I don't blame Illinois for not wanting to give him a larger role. Again, I think he's a nice B version of Terrence Shannon Jr., but is he Terrence Shannon Jr.? I do not think so. He would need to improve his 3-point shooting for next year. I thought he shot the 3-point ball, those last 8 games or so after the Duke loss. But throughout the season, he wasn't exactly a good 3-point shooter for Illinois. For him to get a larger role, he would, I would guess, have to go kind of to a smaller conference, maybe. I'm not saying mid-major, but I don't think any team in the SEC is going to give him a better role. It'll be interesting to see where it goes. But Tre White entering the transfer portal and just makes Brad Underwood's job this summer even harder. And it sucks because I thought he was for sure going to come back after how the season ended. But I do think there might have been something that had to do with the DMPs, in January, February, whenever that time period, right? And, he did kind of have a roller coaster season. I thought in November he wasn't that good. December, he had that great game against Wisconsin, which turned out to be one of Illinois' best wins of the season. He had that great game against Wisconsin, then got on a roll going into the Big Ten season in early January. And then, after KJ got hurt, and we all know what happens, the team just started having a lot of inconsistency, illness, injuries. Tre White got sick, missed a couple games, and then once he was healthy, he had, he got put in the doghouse for whatever reason that who knows if we'll ever learn. So I'm not wishing ill will on Tre White heading into 2025, 2026. But it just feels like he could have embraced that role again one more year. And if there was more continuity on this team and there was more togetherness, the team would be better and perhaps his numbers would be better. Considering how inconsistent this team was, he still averaged double-digit points per game and 5.5 rebounds. They would have had more continuity next year if Tre White was on this team. And who knows? Maybe his three-point shooting gets better. I compared him to Terrence Shannon Jr., like a B version of him. Terrence Shannon Jr. wasn't always the best three-point shooter. His last year at Illinois, he became a much better three-point shooter. Who's to say that Tre White won't be a better three-point shooter next year? I'm sure it's something he'll be working on all summer. So, who knows? It sucks. I am glad that, if it's the case of him wanting a larger role and Brad and the coaching staff didn't tell him, yes, that's what you're going to have. I'm glad they were honest with him. That way, we don't have a distraction come January. And B, I don't think Tre White is a guy you should be featuring as your number one, number two option. I personally just don't think that. If he goes on to wherever he goes and has a much better season than he did at Illinois, good for him, man. Good for him. But there's a video I saw from Glenn Kinney from WCIA in Champaign from all the way back in January. Said that, he came to Illinois because he wanted to go to a good program, a program that challenged him, held him accountable. And just to see how things kind of played out throughout the year, it's just like, do you just say that to say that? Illinois definitely held him accountable. He got put in the doghouse with Brad Underwood for a little bit, and then he bounced back and was awesome at the end of the year. And I gave him a lot of credit for it. But to do this now, we are in an era where this is normalized. And so I'm not trying to paint some big old picture that this is just an Illinois thing, but I don't know. It just feels like you're making your offseason harder now. And in this case, I don't think that's Illinois' fault. Just kind of, I'm disappointed that Tre wanted to leave. And I'm choosing to believe that it's for a larger bag. That's what I'm choosing to believe. So, let me know your thoughts on this. Hit that like button for me on the YouTube video. Subscribe. And again, if you want to check out my reaction related to the Merez Johnson transfer, it's on the YouTube channel. Go check it out. I'll see you in the next video. ILL.